Hello and welcome. One of the big challenges for Indian IT companies is of course going digital, and the going digital journey is something that everyone in India and outside is watching with interest as how Indian IT services companies take up and keep up to that challenge. Joining me to talk about how his company is doing and embarking and has embarked on that going digital journey is Abidali Neemuchwala, CEO of Wipro. Abid, thank you very much for speaking with us. So you have a substantial part of your business that comes from digital, substantial as compared to maybe a few years ago. Walk us through what this has meant in terms of challenges within the company and the changes that have followed.
First of all, Govind, thank you for having me on this panel. I think it's a very interesting time because two or three things which are very unique about digital. One is that digital is a new way of working. So it's not just a technology. It's how you approach it is very different. The second thing is the buyers of digital, especially in the beginning, have been beyond the CIO. So CIO and the Chief Digital Officer, Chief Data Officer, CMO and others. So the stakeholders are different. And third, like any transformation that one has to undergo, both the customers and we are learning about it together. So I think we are very fortunate that we are now about 25% plus digital, and we've followed a very strict definition of digital business for ourselves. So we feel quite good. And I think, rather than challenges, I'll say it's change management on both sides. One is internal change management of reskilling people. And very quickly we realized that it's not only about reskilling. So we had to go out and acquire design talent. We actually first tried to hire designers. And then we realized that we're such an engineering and technology brand, it would be very difficult to hire designers on our platform. So we went and acquired Designit, which was a Scandinavian design company. And then of course we did another acquisition as well of Cooper in the US. But it helped us get a platform on which now we are able to hire designers. So that was one change management, protecting about, when we started it was about 250 designers, of course now there are 600 in a 160,000 engineer company. Is a very interesting change management phenomena that one could call it a challenge, one could call it a change management area that we had to focus on. The second is on the customer side. We were not used to speaking to CMOs as an example, different stakeholders coming in. Business participates much more in how we do it, and that was a learning. And I think again we underwent a huge Salesforce transformation program for our salespeople to be able to have those conversations, have those interactions, but the outcomes are not SLAs, they are business outcomes, which are again very different. And I think the third is the new ways of working. Historically, to some extent the Indian IT industry and we at Wipro brought in CMMI and waterfall processes, and you sign off requirements to do design and you sign off design to do development. Digital is a new way of working. It is agile, continuous delivery, where the traditional waterfall methods don't apply. So it's a different process. So there is a people, customer and process angle apart from technology that we had to work on change management. And I think we are continuing to work on it, but now we've got better, now we've got success, now we've experienced it, now we know what it takes. So it's got a little easier and faster.
Right. So the reskilling challenge is as much for people like you as the CEO as it is for people who work with you. So how have you done this?
Oh, that's very interesting. One of the things that I did is in the vacation I had in summer, we were in the Pacific Northwest, and my son who's in college was doing something on his laptop, and it gives me a lot of family time. So I went to check on him as to what he was doing, and I realized that he was writing an algorithm. And I sat with him and I actually learned Python because he was writing an algorithm in Python for some project work that he was doing, but it gave me a great opportunity to learn it for myself. And interestingly, I realized, of course, I have been a programmer, I have grown in this industry 26 years now. One of the things I realized is that a lot of things that we had to do historically when I started writing programs are all available as libraries now. So in some sense, it is relatively easier, but in some other sense, you're focusing less on the technology and you're focusing more on the application of that technology to business use cases. And that was an interesting learning for me. Rather, I personally believe it is important for the leader and the leadership team to get hands-on with some of these technologies and ways of working to be able to be credible and relevant in our industry.
So you made this into a process of sorts? Are you constantly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But what do your teammates say? Do they get upset because you're now dabbling in
They don't. Actually, they expect those kind of things from me, but actually some of them have started doing this. One of the things that I say internally is the days of a manager are over. So you're a Scrum master, you're a Scrum leader, which essentially means that everybody has to be a developer, everybody has to be technologically hands-on, and you get respected by the people you are hiring only when you are hands-on in technology. And I think historically, even when the industry started, we were all very hands-on. The industry has a lot of homegrown leaders who've been developers, who've worked on it. I think there was a phase where a lot of us became managers and lost touch with technology. And I think those are the people who are struggling, who've not had deep roots in engineering and technology.
I was interviewing your predecessor, TK, couple of years ago, literally 2 years ago, and he was telling me that the middle manager is perhaps at the greatest threat in this whole transition. And he was referring to, the industry as well as companies like Wipro. So how would you say that has panned out?
We've been very fortunate at Wipro actually, because Wipro historically, as you will know, has had a very deep technology and engineering heritage. And that is why our middle management has been very technically savvy. To some extent, when the scaling up of the industry happened, where it was more of a de-skilling of the pyramid and stuff, Wipro still maintained its engineering roots. And that is why one of the things that we've been fortunate is our middle management has been technically hands-on, and they are undergoing this transition faster. Rather, some of our middle management now have moved to full-time technical roles, which in general an average middle manager in the industry does find it challenging to do, because you've been a P&L leader for too long, lost touch from technology. So in some sense that is becoming an advantage for Wipro.
Right, and they have to learn Python as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you look ahead, you said 25% is digital, but there's 75% which is not, and that also reflects what customers are wanting or doing today. How are you going to manage this balance, and are you going to throw, bet the house in digital? Is it going to be a midway path?
I wouldn't call it betting the house. Eventually, everything will become digital. I think it's a matter of 3 years at the most. What is happening is digital is at an inflection point where now it's scaling up very quickly. So, the smaller projects that customers were doing proof of concepts, there was a lot of all-pervasive activity happening, is now happening in a much concentrated manner at scale. To me, as I said, it's a matter of 2 or 3 years that our business will be 100% digital, because I can't think of any new business coming in which is not on the cloud, which is not new applications not being developed on native digital platforms. I can't think of anything not having AI and machine learning included in it. I can't think of data not being analyzed using big data techniques. So all new is digital. And if you look at the pace of the IT industry, every 3-4 years, technology gets refreshed in any enterprise in any case. So I think it's just a matter of time.
Okay. So if I were to ask you for your prognosis ahead, we're obviously talking about digital, artificial intelligence. How is this seeped in, and I'm talking about the really more futuristic stuff, seeped into what you're doing, and what are the 2 or 3 things that you're looking at on your dashboard?
So right now, if you look at it, cloud, which is now $1 billion for Wipro, is become the norm. So that is, what 3 or 4 years back people were doing with cloud, today they are doing with artificial intelligence. So in the next 2 or 3 years, I think artificial intelligence will become the norm. Machine learning, deep learning will be part of every application, every data-based activity that we do. So I personally believe that there is this S curve where people experiment and you hit the knee and then you hit an inflection point. Cloud is right now on the scaling up of the S curve. I think artificial intelligence is on the knee, which will scale up in the next 2 or 3 years.
Right. And finally, are Indian companies, is Indian talent ready for this challenge?
Absolutely. One of the things I chuckle whenever it is asked whether Indian companies will be able to survive this. It's actually we are best positioned to do it because of 2 or 3 reasons. Number one is, if you look at the talent, it's primarily the STEM talent. India has produced a lot, and we have a demographic advantage in some of the brightest talent, irrespective of where they reside. There are a large amount of ethnically Indian population who's part of the technology industry. So even what is being led is by a lot of Indians. Second thing also is that the industry has always been evolving. We all moved from what started as Y2K into .com and ERP and now digital. So I don't think rather transformation is one of the unique advantages that our industry has. So absolutely. And the third is also that the leadership now is much more, I would call the stakeholders
prepared and ready for.
Are better prepared. They've matured we've all matured as an industry. We know how these transformation happen. So we're better prepared to be able to undergo this.
Absolutely. Last question. So are we now past the H1B scare?
I wouldn't get complacent. I think we've learned, at least at Wipro, we now are 55% local in the United States. We've had a policy of, mitigating this risk. So we feel much more comfortable. We don't see it as a threat.
Right. Abid, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Govind.